Let's continue. It's still Monday. We're on chapter 6, which is on page 114. Let me try to position this. You can see my face, maybe. Okay, we're just starting off badly in a way that doesn't make sense and probably won't get explained, and it's just... Chapter 6, we just read Kai. We got a little paragraph telling us what he's doing, not showing us what he's doing, just telling us, and then telling us that it was really exhausting work. Chapter 6, Kai woke to firelight on his eyelids and grimaced. The sway of the ship told him where he was, even if his brain felt slow and waterlogged. He managed to make out Sandra standing over him with a small clay lamp. She called to someone. Yes, he's alive. Kai sat up, shoving his hair out of his face. He was still on the floor of the cabin, but someone had put a cushion under his head and a quilt over him. What? He demanded. Now he's awake, Sandra reported over her shoulder. Did you eat? Does Zidi need a rest? Kai rubbed his eyes. And then we get even more ridiculousness. He called a swarm of imps, and they flitted around the room and out into the main part of the cabin, shedding a soft white glow on the polished wood and gold. Why are people assuming that he's dead? That doesn't make fucking sense. Was that supposed to be funny? It's just confusing. Why is he... So he can just summon imps out of literally nowhere and just use them as a fucking flashlight at any time he wants, even when he's on a boat in the middle of the ocean and having water between him and the actual earth is supposed to stop his powers from working. So now he can just casually summon multiple imps, even though we were just told at the last page before this chapter started that he's almost out of energy, guys, because he totally did a whole bunch of really difficult spell work that we aren't shown in any way. We're just told, and now he can just summon a swarm of imps to use as a fucking flashlight for some fucking reason. Sandra is now acting as a messenger between Kai and Zidi, despite the fact that Kai and Zidi have a literal telepathic walkie-talkies in their heads, well, technically their hearts, so they can just talk to each other whenever they fucking want. But Zidi decided to send Sandra instead, because I guess Martha Wells needs to remind us that Sandra, as a little kid, exists. She's here. She's totally a character in the story. This totally makes it found family. Zidi says the wind finally picked up in the right direction so she can let the air monsters steer for a while. She wants you to find out from those people, the cohort leaders and the spy and the other two, what they know. So it's just going to be a whole nother chapter of characters chatting and talking about shit that's not fucking important and isn't actually progressing the plot, but we're going to pretend it's progressing the plot because this is what Martha Wells did in Book 5. This is why Book 5 of the Murderbot Diaries is the length of a novel despite not having enough plot or literally anything else in it to be novel length, because she just filled out the pages by having the characters sit around talking about the problem instead of doing anything. So we're just gonna do that again, but this time Sandra is saying to do it, even though they literally have heart walkie-talkies. Kai says, give me a moment, and then tells Zidi to make them come in here. Because I guess Martha Wells forgot that they have heart walkie-talkies. Are they doing this so that Sandra feels useful? So that she has something to do? Is it literally just so that the readers remember she exists? I don't think Martha Wells knows what silk is. The woven grass silk. Silk isn't grass. It's made from silkworms. Silk is a specific fucking material. I'll just read this sentence. These clothes had probably belonged to a Klein's. Dot and comma, whatever you call that. The woven grass silk was soft and fine. The dark blue iridescence on the folds. Period. That's not a sentence. That's not a proper sentence. The woven grass silk was soft and fine, comma, the dark blue iridescence on the folds. Iridescent on the folds. Kai's hair had dried into a curly, frizzy mane. He shook it out and didn't bother tying it back. Why didn't he dry his hair before? Why did she even bother telling us the demons are weak to water if he literally just has been walking around and sitting around in wet clothing this whole entire fucking time? Sandra's back from telling Ziti that Kai says to tell the other people to come to this room. And Sandra was already back and had settled on the couch along the starboard wall. Her legs were tucked up and folded, but one knee bounced impatiently. What about her broken toes, Martha Wells? You literally can't tell us she has broken toes and then never bring that up again. This, for a book that cost $28.99 in the US originally and $38.99 originally for Canada. And the imps are still there. So Kai tells them to gather overhead and leaned back, and he's just sitting on a throne that's on the boat now because we gotta be edgy. It's totally cool though. Martha Wells' protagonists. Once you see that they're what they are and what they all have in common, it's impossible to unsee. Shem says, "You refuse to release my crew members who were kidnapped here and enslaved to run the ship through powers that just change depending on what the plot is." Before Kai could, and the reason he put them all to magical sleep because there's not enough food or anything on the boat to feed them properly, and they don't have medical supplies to treat them and stuff. So he has a good reason that Martha Wells is telling us is a good reason for him to just put them into a magical sleep instead of waking them up and leaving them exactly where they fucking are, for the record. It doesn't actually make sense if you go back and reread that scene where they're described or just remember it, because remember, we're told that their hands are like covered on the oars. They're just... doesn't make sense. It's badly written. It doesn't make fucking sense. They were frozen in place, sitting on the oar rowing benches, but they weren't actually moving. They're just frozen in place, holding onto the oars for some fucking reason, but also their hands were covered in blood and pus because she She thinks if she makes it gross, that's the same thing as being mature, and it's not. That's just called being edgy for the sake of being edgy. That's not maturity. So their hands are covered in blood and pus on the oars, and 6 people were shoved into a seat that was meant for 2. And all of this shit, and it's like, you could have put them into a magical sleep and then moved them somewhere they're not literally touching the bloody and pussy oars and crammed into spaces that are too small for them, but we're just gonna pretend this is fine. And then Kai's response to somebody asking, why aren't you letting them go, instead of explaining the good reasons, doesn't actually fucking, it doesn't fucking, I don't believe the good reasons. Before his response, instead of telling this person it's because we don't have enough food and water and we can't help them here and they'd probably die if we were let them go before we can find healers, his response is not to explain that. It's before Kai can make a flippant yet vaguely threatening response. Because Martha Wells' protagonists just have to be sarcastic assholes who are mean to people for literally no fucking reason, but we're supposed to pretend it makes them relatable. Like, as though being mean to somebody who is concerned about their enslaved friends who've gotten tortured this whole time and seem to still be getting tortured. We're just treating her being upset by her friends getting tortured. And we're just supposed to think, oh yeah, you should respond in a really mean and purposefully threatening and mean way, like she's a weird customer at a fucking grocery store and you're the manager or something. It's like, why would your response to this be a flippant yet vaguely threatening? So he's literally trying to upset her on purpose, this woman who is already upset by her friends being enslaved and tortured. And his response is to try and make her more upset by pretending that he is threatening her and also doesn't care about her friends who are getting tortured and enslaved, instead of literally just explaining his good reasons for leaving them like this. Like, what fucking sense does that make? So Ramad, that was Hashem who was upset about this. And then Ramad has to be the one to explain, if he just released them, they could panic, injure themselves, and we don't have enough supplies to keep them fed. Martha Wells doesn't understand how oppression works. Kai said, I'm glad you approve, cohort leader, aka Hashem, aka the lady who is upset about her friends being tortured and enslaved. And then Kai thinks to himself, it was unsurprising, but still a sour bite that a random Vanguarder's word was better than his. So Martha Wells tells us that Kai, his reaction would have been to threaten this woman and pretend that he is enjoying seeing her friends being tortured and enslaved. And now Martha Wells wants us to feel bad for him because people don't listen to him and a random Vanguarder's word was better than his, even though he didn't say anything because he got interrupted before he could make a flippant threat. And now we're supposed to feel bad for him and pretend he's oppressed because somebody else actually explained the good reasons that they are keeping these people in a magical sleep while still sitting and holding the pussy and bloody oars, crammed 6 fully grown adults into a seat that's meant for 2 fully grown adults. And now it's a sour bite that a random Vanguarder's word was better than his. His word, Ramad's word being better than Kai's, would only be possible if Kai had actually said and explained the good reasons for keeping them all like this. He explicitly did not. He wasn't even planning to fucking say that. His plan was to make a flippant yet vaguely threatening response. That's at the very top of the page here. It's gonna be blurry because this computer sucks. Hopefully the video isn't backwards for you. You can see that at the top there. Kai's plan to this woman being upset and demanding to know why they're not releasing her tortured and enslaved friend. This is page 116. Kai's response was, verbatim, before Kai could make a flippant yet vaguely threatening response, Ramad told her, what Kleins did isn't easy on the body or the mind. It's better this way. If he just lets them go, they could panic, injure themselves, and we don't have enough supplies to feed them. Hashem, a lady who's upset about her friends being tortured and enslaved, hesitated, reluctant, but she was obviously finding Ramad's point persuasive. Finally, she grudgingly nodded. I see. Kai said, I'm glad you approve, cohort leader. It was unsurprising, but still a sour bite that a random vanguarder's word was better than his. You have no word. Did they even say a single fucking thing? There is no word for Ramaz to be better than, because he didn't fucking say any of his goddamn reasons. This is not an instance of Kai explained his good reasons for keeping these people locked in the fucking stasis that is injuring them. And then this other guy said the exact same thing. And then she believes the other guy instead of Kai. He literally didn't explain his good reasons. He wasn't planning to explain his good reasons. He was planning to brush this woman off. The word it used is flippant, yet vaguely threatening. He was literally planning to fucking make her think that he is doing all of this shit to further torture her friends and going to threaten her at the same fucking time. You know, I guess this is a good time. Maybe this is a good time to bring up the fact that in Martha Wells' actual standalone novel, City of Bones, she has her protagonist, Kat, Khat. He's considering at one point just casually considering threatening to rape the female protagonist, and Kai is supposed to be our male protagonist. He's just casually thinking, maybe I should threaten to rape her. And then he doesn't. And Martha Wells just wrote this like it's nothing. And now here she's having Kai. He was literally planning to threaten this woman and upset her on purpose. And then we're supposed to feel bad for Kai and pretend like he's some kind of oppressed minority because this other guy who interrupts him before he can even open his mouth explains the good reasons they're doing this. And then Kai gets sad and feels bitter that other guy who actually said a thing, his word is better than Kai's, who said literally nothing and was planning to say something purposefully cruel and horrible on purpose. And now we're supposed to feel bad because nobody believes Kai. He didn't say anything to be believed in the first place, and what he was planning to say was threats and purposeful antagonization of a woman who is literally just concerned about her tortured and enslaved friends. And this is our protagonist that we're supposed to think is a good person. This is who Martha Wells wants us to cheer for. We're not supposed to like Hashem. That's only the start. We didn't even get this far down the page. We're up here. Yeah, in City of Bones, Martha Wells just casually has Kat, Khat. Think very casually. Maybe I should threaten to rape what's her fucking name. That'll teach her a lesson. And then these are characters we're still supposed to like. And we're supposed to feel bad for Kai, for nobody taking his word because he's a poor, oppressed, literal demon who steals people's bodies. again, we're just doing that thing where the characters stand around talking about shit as though it's meaningful and as though it's progressing the plot when it's not. Kai said, "Introduce your friends." Safri says, "and Kinlat," which I'm probably mispronouncing because there's no pronunciation guide. "Lords in the court of Nient Arik," Ashem added with a grimace, "not my friends." And then we just get Kai monologuing to himself in thought. Nient Arik had been one of the first Araik city-states to fall to the hierarchs, who had assassinated the presiding prince heir and replaced her with a distant relative willing to submit to them, which was interesting but not proof of anything. Something similar had happened in Benes Arik, though not until most of Bashasa's family had already been murdered. And again, we're just saying all of these names and places and events as though these are the events that already took place in a book we all already read, except we didn't, because this is the first book in the series, and it was marketed as a standalone. They're calling her one of the leading writers of her generation. That's the biggest fucking insult to that generation of authors. Now we get to the part where Martha Wells has these characters act in ways that we're supposed to pretend are funny and relatable, as though these are characters we already know well. "You kidnapped me and my cadre and an entire cohort," Eshem retorted, exasperated. It was the first unguarded reaction she had shown yet. The fact that she's exasperated and gets to be exasperated. What is going on now? Hold on. Let me just read these paragraphs because it's coming out of nowhere and makes no fucking sense because it's badly written. It's lies. Kinlat, who's not even really described as being in the room properly. He has no description. We don't know what he looks like. He's just a floating voice. Kinlat burst out, as if he couldn't hold it in a moment more, even to save his life. "There was never an alliance. It was never. Imperial Araik destroyed the hierarchs with no help from these abominations. Is that a typo? Imperial Araik, Arike, destroyed the hierarchs with no help from these abominations." And then Kai is saying the Arik with no E at the end. Is that a typo? Is that supposed to be a political fucking thing? Wasn't it? The Arik wasn't an empire back then, and technically isn't even one now, Kai corrected. As the many things go, if you have to say it's technically not pedophilia, it's pedophilia. If it's not technically an empire, it's a fucking empire. The Arik wasn't an empire back then, and technically it isn't even one now, Kai corrected. He had heard all this before, which didn't make it any easier, but at least it wasn't new. He could tell that these two had been subjugated to an expositor's will, whether they understood that aspect of their relationship with the Kleins or not. It made them vulnerable in a way that Ashem and Ramad and the other mortals on the ship wouldn't be. Kai used a little of his stored power to set his voice in a tone that would resonate with that vulnerability and compel answers. So we're just being told out of nowhere that people calling the Arik an empire makes Kai sad for some fucking reason, and also we're getting told that these two people were brainwashed So now Kai is going to step into that brainwashing void and brainwash them himself. And that's fine, because he's the protagonist. He asks, with the brainwashing thing, who ordered us captured and trapped? A Kleins, Sappho said immediately, it was his doing. And then we just get told, their response had been too quick, period. Sappho was apparently clever enough to pretend to be under Kai's influence, period. So, are you telling me, Martha Wells, that they knew that they were being brainwashed and they know that Kai is now trying to brainwash them? It's page 117. I don't think ZD exists to do anything except make violent comments, because she's the one you're supposed to fear, not Kai. ZD says out of nowhere, shut up, Ramad, or I'll rip your tongue out. For no reason. That's the only reason we know she's in the room. ZD was clearly at the end of her small store of patience. Sure. Again, of telling us shit. And so to summarize, Sanja and Tenez exist just to be little kids that follow the protagonists around so that we can claim that they are a found family, and ZD exists just to say edgy things and make threatening, edgy threats to make her seem cool because reasons. Kai focused on Sappho's. Unfortunately for him, pretending to be under the influence of Kai's will just made him more easily affected. What logic is that? Oh my God! They're just sitting here, they're just talking. Kai leaned forward. A drop of sweat trickled down his forehead. This was almost pure will, and it wasn't easy, even on two mortals whose minds had been subjugated already, even on an overconfident Sappho. We're just told he's... How many times is she gonna do this? I should have gotten if I'd known this was gonna happen so often, I would have gotten out a sheet of paper to use a fucking tally marker. Jesus. Oh my God. We're just casually chatting, and then she tells us, right here where my thumb is, right over here. Right now she's just telling us that this is actually so difficult and so magically intensive that he's sweating. Kai leaned forward. A drop of sweat trickled down his forehead. This was almost pure will, and it wasn't easy. Then why isn't that expressed? Why aren't you... It's so badly written. Oh my God, and it's so easy to fix. This is so easy to fucking fix. Oh my God. It's so terrible. Why do you keep telling us you can't just keep doing shit, making him do shit with zero effort, and then just telling us after he's already been doing it, oh, actually, it's very difficult. I'll have you know. It's very difficult. He's sweating because it's so difficult. A drop of sweat trickled down his forehead. This wasn't easy. Except it is, because you're fucking bad at writing. Jesus Christ. I don't have a piece of paper now. I do have a marker. Let me go get my fucking marker and I'll just write a tally on my fucking room. Alright, I got my fucking washable marker. How many times now have we been told that Kai is just doing a thing? Just in the last, 2 chapters. I'm gonna go with 3 tally marks. Because we were told he was doing all that magical shit. And was just told he was doing the magic shit. Not shown him doing the magic shit. And then we're told that it was so difficult and so exhausting that he had to fall asleep immediately as soon as he was done. And then we found out he was just soaking wet this entire fucking time, including when he was doing that magic. But that's fine, because reasons. And now we're told, it's actually very difficult to brainwash people after he's already been doing it. It's making him sweat, and we literally have to get told it wasn't easy, despite it very clearly being easy. Oh, we have another name for a magical spell thing that the fucking expositors do. Saphraces fought to keep his lips closed, but Kinlat blurted. He had the strictures. That's a new spell type for expositors. A stricture. STRICTURE. And intentions for the working. The signal that told him when something went wrong. He knew the tower had opened. He knew how to find you. Kinlat struggled to move his arms as if he wanted to stop up his own mouth. Now we're again, characters just sitting around talking and just giving us truckloads of names and shit as though they mean something, but they don't. Now Kai's like, do you know an expositor named Menlis? The guy that, despite being in the Dramatis Personae at the start, it just died within 20 pages, I think. Let me scroll back. Oh, he dies way before page 20. Page 20. That is such an that's giving Martha Wells too much credit. Menlis died on page 7. He died on page 7, slightly less than the halfway point. That's where Menlis died, where my thumb is over here. That's where Menlis died. This is page 6. This is page 7. He died 6.5 pages into the book. And we're still discussing him as though he's important. 118 pages later. I'll have to mention that. Like how I predicted that all of those people would be dead before 10 pages were up, and I was literally right. Most of them died on page 6. It took Menlis to die on page 7. 6.5 pages in. We're just talking about this fucking man, Menlis. This is why these two characters are in here, and Kai is brainwashing them to interrogate them, because It's just more characters sit around and talk and don't actually do anything to progress the plot, and we're pretending that them talking about the plot is progressing the plot, even though it's not. Through her pearl, she whispered, "Taren!" Kai didn't think it was the best moment to ask, but he knew how much pain and uncertainty Zedi felt. Again. Zedi is supposed to be, Taren is her wife, because we're doing a speed run of enemies to lovers without any of the character progression that actually makes it matter. So we just keep getting told that Zedi is in pain. She's so sad, guys. That's why she keeps making violent threats. We're not actually going to see her sad. We're just going to keep getting told that she's sad. But again, this is just a whole scene of them brainwashing and torturing people to get information that's not actually fucking helpful, and they could just get by, scrying with that little wraithling thing. I think Martha Wells keeps having her characters have magical telepathy things because she doesn't actually want them to need to have private conversations by actually working strategically. So this way they can just trade information whenever they need to, whether or not they're surrounded by other people. It's a cop-out. And why aren't they using the witch speak either? But I guess we're just pretending that's whatever. Now we're talking about some guy named Dahin, who is Taren's brother. And Zedi says, "Why were you watching Dahin?" And then the guy answers, "Because he has fallen like his sister," and fallen is a capital F. "And all the fallen should die," Kinlat said with great satisfaction. Even Ashem let out an exasperated breath. The fact that she is allowed to be exasperated now means that she's gonna get to become one of our quirky, funny main characters. Because that's supposed to be funny. It's supposed to be funny that these people say the traitors should die. It's bad. Where's my marker? Kai knew he could only keep this up so long. The brainwashing that we're being told is so strenuous, so difficult that it's making him sweat. Despite no reflection of that in the narration at all. Nothing. No description of anything. And I'll ask another question. We were told when he passed out from the magic at the end of chapter 5, we were told that he was passing out because he'd used up most of the magic he'd absorbed from people. Because he'd absorbed that apprentice so long ago now. So implying that's all gone. So where's the fucking energy coming from for him to do this? Because she kind of implied he was passing out because he'd used up all but like the tiny little piece of his energy. implying, very heavily implying that he had used up most, if not almost all of his energy. And then he fell asleep. And then I guess we're pretending that he has all of his energy back just from sleeping. So we can just do this no problem. And we're just gonna get told that it's a problem when it's fucking not. Ashem threw a glare at Ramad. She said, "Are you giving away a state secret?" It was Ramad's turn to look exasperated. Martha Wells really likes the word exasperated when we're supposed to relate to characters because people are being silly. Ramad is just going off about some bullshit. Blah, fucking it, blah, 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 blah. They're literally just talking about the plot instead of doing the fucking plot. I'm on page 120. The person who bought this book originally and then gave it to Goodwill got to page 50 because that's where their bookmark was left. We are this far into the fucking book. I'd say a quarter of the way through. Looks like a quarter to me. Or, I mean a third. I can't do math. I meant a third. Yeah. I'd say we're a third of the way through. Maybe slightly more than that. This is why most people are not finishing this book. They're literally, the majority of the time, they've just been talking about the plot instead of actually having a plot. We're still doing this brainwashing interrogation that I guess we're supposed to pretend is really suspenseful and intriguing. We're just torturing people now. I mean, yeah, brainwashing is a form of torture. They're just getting tortured. Saphraces gasped. Brahma, the prince speaker. It was he. Blood sprayed from his lips as he bit his tongue. Ashem was frankly startled, as if until now she had suspected this was all some kind of trick on Kai and Zedi's part. So Ashem has just been standing here watching them brainwash and torture these people in an interrogation and thought it was all some kind of trick that they're pretending they don't want to answer. This is ridiculous. This is page 121. Brahma is the Prince Speaker of Mient Arik. He nodded to Kai. You've just made my job much easier. What's your fucking job? Why are they all just sitting around not fucking doing anything? Oh, again. Wait, I gotta do it again. That's 5. Just you look at this next paragraph. Kai's heart pounded with the effort, and a spike of pain lanced through his temple, there and gone like the stab of a long needle. Ziti said, "That's enough," out loud. Through her pearl, she added, "You're pushing yourself too hard." Torturing prisoners. And it's totally difficult, guys, because we'll interrupt the scene to tell you it's difficult. Not actually show that like an actual competent writer. We're just going to interrupt it. Let me just reread the rest of that. That paragraph is before this one. This one is next. Blood on his lips and chin. Saphracis's face flushed dark, and his gaze burned with hate. Kinlat's eyes had gone vague, a sign that Kai's will was starting to turn his brain, and Kai had a weird floating sensation that had nothing to do with the motion of the ship. He released his will. I gotta have to mark this again. A tightness in his chest gave way, and he took a full breath, startled. He hadn't been aware of the slow building pressure until now. He let himself fall back against the throne. That gets 2 checks. We are getting a check every single time, but we are told about a different effect that just told of the different effect that was nowhere hinted until we were told. So apparently he was holding his breath and not breathing. Yeah. And Ziti lifted her hand and picked up the reins of the cantrips. She tightened her grip until both men choked, stumbled, and then collapsed to the floor. With both of them unconscious, she opened her hand and let them breathe again. She said, "I was tired of listening to them anyway." And these are the protagonists. These are supposed to be the good guys, just casually torturing prisoners with mind control, and then torturing them by cutting off their oxygen until they literally fall unconscious, which can give you brain damage. And this is supposed to be the quirky, relatable, found family good guys. Ziti, who's just cruel and mean and says scary, edgy, threatening things. The 2 children, the 2 little girls that have less function in the story than a dog would, and then Kai, who is all-powerful and can do all the magic for no reason, and only it has magical consequences for things. Water only affects him when it does, and then it doesn't when it doesn't. We're now on page 122. At the top of that was Ziti torturing them to not be able to breathe, and I guess we're supposed to pretend they deserve this for some fucking undefined reason. They don't. They've never done a single thing, even remotely, to make that even plausibly something they can deserve, and also they are literally helpless prisoners. They're already chained by magic. They were never released from the magic. They've just been tortured. Whatever, it's totally fine. Just go ahead, Martha Wells. Go ahead and encourage the torture of prisoners in 2023, 2025 now. Go ahead. That's totally politically neutral. This is so stupid. With Kaisteron, Witch King, and Zedi Dayaha missing from Bashat's court during what I assume is an election, we're not getting any explanation because this is shittily written as though it's the fucking third or fourth series book in a series, as though we already know this shit. With Blah and Blah missing from Bashat's court during the time of the renewal, it makes it look like Benes Arik has lost your support, and the support of the Witchlands. With Taran Starguard missing, it's worse. It puts the treaties with the Immortal Blessed at risk. It could disrupt the whole empire. It's a coalition, not an empire, Kai said, pressing his hands to his temples. The spikes of pain faded, but his head still felt like one of the Gad Azara volcanoes, all pressure and heat. Again, just getting told this, not shown it. And oh, it's not an empire, it's a coalition. Excuse me, it's not technically an empire. You guys are torturing prisoners. I don't think I'm going to trust anything you have to say politically. We're still just chatting about the fucking problem instead of doing a single thing. We're on page 123. We could have just skipped over all of this bullshit and actually gotten on with some kind of fucking plot. Time skips are a thing that should be fucking used. Just go somewhere and do something. This is not a political drama. You want to read characters sitting around talking that's actually well written and actually is progressing the plot? Go read the Imperial Ratch. It starts with ancillary justice. Go fucking read that. Check my phone battery, I guess. 29%. Okay. Guess this video has to end so the damn phone can get plugged in. Bye-bye. How far did we even get? We got to page 122 with 54 fucking minutes because there's just so much fucking wrong I have to keep interrupting. Bye-bye.